Thank you. So anyway, one of the funniest thing that Camilla hasn't said is originally in that in the Manchester 13th or 14th, whatever, Congress, International Congress of Science and Anthropological Science and Anthropological and Ethnological Science. I presented 2 papers. 4 years before in Kunming, I presented 4 papers. But at the time in Kunming, the Chinese government was paying, so more people, no problem. In Manchester, the English university was paying, so 2 papers, there was 1 too many. So they told me, no, the second paper, you can't present it. And then thankfully, Camilla, first I got to tell you how I discovered Chris Knight, because I mean, we could use 5 minutes for that. One day in 2009, I read the news, and the news was saying, well, then an anarchist anthropologist is being put in jail. I said, wait a minute, what's this? I need to know this guy. Who's this guy? So that's how I met him. And then I don't know, I don't think I contacted him then. And then it just, when we got to Manchester, I was planning, I was planning to go to England. And when I go to England, I was planning to get in touch with him. And then happened that was Manchester. And then when I told Camilla, when she saw that this paper had been canceled, not accepted by the committee, she said, well, it's good because we've got another lady who was supposed to do a lecture and then she has a spot and she's not coming, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So at the last second they organized, they put a few more papers together, including her paper, and they organized a session about matriarchal society, more or less, about matriarchal society. Well, anyway, so maybe now everybody's there, so we're going to start. So a few hours later, not a few hours later, like half an hour earlier, Chris said, well, I don't want you to read the PowerPoint. I said, well, wait a minute, you know, I've never done twice in my life the same lecture. So I said, well, if I don't have my PowerPoint, I don't know, I'm afraid I'm not going to say something important, I'm going to add something that's not so important. I said, well, it's boring if you read. Well, I said, I'm not going to read it, but if I'd known, I would have just put it on this computer, I would just have seen some photos, and I would have logged here just to make sure I wasn't forgetting any points. But don't worry, I'm not going to read it. And not totally read it, just a little bit. Anyway, who I am, I'm a guest professor at Sichuan University, but just by coincidence, because really I'm a polo player. I own 15 years, 2 records as a polo player, as a female polo player. I've raced 8 races as a jockey. I've crossed the Atlantic Ocean on a sailboat, and I did many other things. Because I was lucky, my father had money, and I had a few very rich boyfriends, so I didn't have to work. So, life was good. And so basically, I've had a boyfriend in every harbor. And basically, so I've lived my life as I wanted, and basically, when I'm standing up, I'm a man, and when I'm lying down, I'm a female. So I get the best of both worlds. And now, how am I coming to give you a lecture now? Because that doesn't mean you didn't come to listen. Just say he wants to know about Frederique Darragon. I said, look, if I said Frederique Darragon, what do you hear about me? I don't think you would have come. So I'm just telling you a little bit about me.
Go on.
And so, how I come to write this book. Most of the photos I took them and saved these towers that were being destroyed by the local people. Because out of coincidence, I went to China. I've always were interested in China, and I went to China in 92 for the first time. Hitchhiked around the country, and in 96 I saw those towers. They were being destroyed by the local people, and I said, well, I took some wood, got it carbon dated, find out that they were more than some 600 years old, blah blah blah. So I thought it was very interesting. I didn't know how to promote them and protect them. I did a documentary. Discovery Channel bought it. And then everything, the towers become very famous, and now they're saved, and the government is protecting them, and they're not being destroyed. Now we haven't really succeeded in protecting the local culture, but I'm working on that. And now what's the link between the towers and the matriarchal societies? And Chris is going to say, well, they were used as, what's the name of this tale?
Rapunzel.
Okay, well, I don't think it was really the story. A little bit of it, maybe. But anyway, in this region, which is the Chinese, the Sino-Tibetan, come in. The Sino-Tibetan corridor, I speak loud, so if you make noise, it doesn't matter. So in the Sino-Tibetan corridor, what as its name explains, it's between China and Tibet, okay? And it's a land of very high mountains, because it's the foothill of the Himalayas, of the 4 major rivers of 4 or 5 major rivers in China, and going some to the Mekong, the Yangtze, you name it, the Yellow River, or the Yellow River. They all start in this region, and some of them go down this corridor. And since ever, it's been occupied by tribes, and they want like independent kingdoms. Some of them pledged allegiance to the Chinese, some of them pledged allegiance to the Tibetans. They were conquered partly by the Tibetans, but they were mainly independent in doing their things because they were very remote. So now, let me go back to that because I'm going to talk and we're never going to get to the point. So now, wait a minute, let's see. Oh yeah, so, doing too fast there. Okay, so that I've already told you. These are the towers, just a few photos. Now, what's interesting is when I start researching these towers, because they were, you don't need to read, because if you read, it's going to be upset with me, okay? So don't read, just listen to me. Just if you can't hear what I'm saying, which I doubt, you can read. But if not, you don't read. So basically, there were these towers. I'm sorry?
She's not. Don't worry.
Oh, well, don't do, okay, well, now who am I to listen? Like, I mean, you're at least, I don't know, 25, 30, so if everybody's got their own opinion, you know, we're not going to stay there until tomorrow. Which might happen if I did what Chris says, because you say, oh, you know your topic very well, but I know my topic so well that I can talk for 5 days, and then, you know, and you're still going to be here. I don't think you will, so this is, I'm trying to make it shorter. Anyway. So it's these towers, they were talked about in the ancient Chinese book, the Chinese Annals. So I start, with the help of some friends, researching the Chinese Annals. And every time they were mentioned, they were mentioned in, some of them were in a very mysterious kingdom of women, the new Er Guos. So that's caught my attention. And then more interesting, there are some matrilineal societies that have no marriage in the region. So that really also caught my attention. And that was really different because our mind, you know, think that all these things don't exist anymore. You know, it's like nobody's really said it still exists. So we just think it's a bit different from what we're thinking. Now, which button? Okay. Because really our mind needs theory about everything. Don't read. Our mind needs theory to understand the world. So we always want theories, and the theories become more important than the thing, and we don't go on the ground to see. And since I was not an anthropologist, I just became an anthropologist because I want to save the towers, and now I want to save the local people and their culture. I became an anthropologist, so I'm looking at things from outside. I'm not looking for, and I don't need to do classes to make a living, you know, so I do whatever I want, which obviously is great. And I'm very happy of that. So there are a lot of theories I've been explaining why women should do this or should not do that, as you know, the blood theory, the game theory, like women can't hunt, you know, all those things, the hoe versus plow, the blood taboo for menstruating women, they can't go hunting, all these things. But really now a lot of women and non-Indo-European white males their voices are starting to be heard, and they're coming with different ideas, which is opening a new field. And also in a lot of archaeological tools like DNA testing, satellite chips that we can, so this is for animals, not for people obviously, but you know, it's helpful to track animals, to know exactly what is their life. And then we obviously can study human societies, seeing what animals are doing, and especially our close relative, the primates. But even the other, they are very interesting for other reasons. Okay, now I don't know if shall we go through the theoretical debate, or are you all familiar with that?
No, go through it.
I got to go through it? Okay, so basically, you know, that I got to read to make sure I don't forget anything. So basically, Bachofen started with his book, Mother Right. He really was studying Greek and Roman mythology. And he thought that, you know, basically, ancient Greece was a matrilineal or matriarchal or whatever society, that women were very important. And then obviously Morgan and Briffaut, following a French guy, Lafitau, they start documenting the New World local Indian societies. And these societies were nearly like matrilineal, that they certainly were, and nearly matriarchal. So now with what's her name? Gimbutas? Yes, with her, everybody's starting to embrace the mother goddess. You know, there were lots of books written about that, and it was especially interesting at the time because the Westerners were invading, you know, and trying to control a lot of many parts of the world. So if they say, oh, all these people are just salvages because they have, you know, they have free sex, whatever, so they're just salvages. So they need us to help them become, you know, Christian and all that. So it was a good reason for everybody to embrace the mother goddess theory, and then to justify colonialism to destroy the barbarian promiscuity. Now, Engels, that's a problem, because I think if Engels, I know, I'm sorry to say that, but if Engels had not adapted that, and not somewhat adopted matriarchy as a pre-stage, a pre-state stage of human evolution, then especially at the time when the first wave of feminism was rocking the world, then it would have been much simpler, because now there is this link that we can't shake between matriarchy and communism. So the people who are not communists, they say, well, we throw everything away together. So it's a bit of a problem also as far as listening to what the Chinese people say, because all the Westerners said, well, obviously the Chinese believe matriarchy existed because they're communists, even they're not communist anymore. But they all think, and there, lots of things were written before communism in China, obviously. So now after that, well, I'm not so good with that, but Boas and Lowy have, introduced a cultural relativism, which is different to cultural evolutionism. Well, it's not so good. I speak Chinese most of them and French lately. My English is going very poor. Anyway, so they don't want to hear anything about matriarchy. They don't want to hear anything about matrilineality. And they say, that's very simple. The nuclear family is the only block and basic unit of all families, all over the world, everywhere. That's simple. We make it simple. We don't want to hear anything else. And then everybody listened. Okay, now that's the bottom. Okay. And then obviously there is Levi-Strauss and Darwin, and there's like the Levi-Strauss is the exchange woman theory, which obviously is right. I'm not right sometimes. And Darwin, but they were only looking at the male strategies. They said something about the female, but basically with the male strategy, they could not really put the female strategy in their ideas. And so there's another thing also that this is what obviously Chris's thesis about that. Levi-Strauss said that all the myths are fundamentally the same, and Chris has said it's all the myths depreciate women all around the world. Obviously, you know, Pandora and Eve, okay, because they're cursed, they bring disaster on humanity. And all the Amazon story and all, this is just free love society, it's just an erotic dream of them, it's just a male erotic dream. And like this is supposed to be erotic toys. Well, obviously I'm not a man, but if I was a man, I don't think if I want to make love, if I see that, but I can't judge. Now what I'm saying is obviously, if myth were needed to keep women in their place, then why didn't we, because we had slavery, as long as humans have been existing pretty much, but maybe not as long, but for a long time. And there was no myth were ever invented to justify slavery. So anyway, so now we get to the Chinese part, to the Asian part. What's interesting, what I discovered once I was in China and in Asia and I started researching that, is they have a totally different narrative, very completely different from ours. And it's very strange because China is ultra-patriarchal, Japan is ultra-patriarchal. So how come this is? Basically, we were talking earlier of Nuwa. Nuwa is the most ancient proto-Chinese god. Like these people were not yet Chinese. Okay, well that's what I mean by proto-Chinese. They were not yet Chinese, and they believe that Nuwa created the human race with mud, with clay, as many other stories. But she created the human race, and then the sky got broken, and she even fixed the sky. And then so I spoke about the Pangu myth. It's just for the Chinese people that. Now during the Zhou, there was like 3 dynasties pre-China. China really starts in 200 BC more or less. In 300 BC. And previous to that, this is the first Chinese dynasty, the Qing dynasty. Previous to that, there were supposedly the Xia dynasty. We don't really know exactly what the Xia dynasty was. Then the Shang dynasty, this one we know. We have a list of kings, more or less. And then the Zhou dynasty, which is quite well documented. And so the Zhou dynasty start about 1,300 maybe I'm getting wrong with one. Whatever. Let's say we're about 1,100 years ago, because there was also a sort of overlap. They were not really all over China, obviously. So then they, because they couldn't accept Nuwa as such an important goddess, then they created Fuxi to balance Nuwa. And by then, because in 500 BC starts, they have the yin-yang, we start reading about the yin-yang theory. The yin-yang theory is like, you know, the yin-yang drawing, right? The two things are like this, black and white. In which means that nothing, it's the female, I mean, the black doesn't dominate the white doesn't dominate the black, the female are not dominated by the male. It's just like, both things are needed to be together. I should have put that little drawing. So this as a map, this is Fuxi Nuwa. This is only a Tang dynasty drawing, so this is like about 700. But there, we have Fuxi Nuwa on tombs, which is like about look, the Han dynasty, so it's about 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, we already have Fuxi and Nuwa on tombs. Only this drawing is more interesting because at the beginning they had both, the top was human and the bottom was like that of a dragon. And then at the Tang dynasty they have these two serpents intertwined. And what's interesting, if you see there, that he has this thing which is to build a house. I mean, like what you call this thing there? The square.
T-square.
Okay, yeah. To build a house, and she has a compass, and the compass is to make something round, because in ancient China the sky was round and the earth was square. So this is why he has the square, and he comes later. He comes, and also he invented marriage. So before him, no marriage, so free sex. Now, let's see, the problem with free sex is the man says, ha ha ha, free sex. But if it's free sex for the man, it's free sex for the women also. So obviously, we've got to see the two sides of the story. So yes, and then after they came to represent, because they're so well balanced, they came to represent the marital bliss. Now, what's interesting is that, I already talked that before you got there, around 1300 BC, on the plastron of what's the name of this? Turtle, the turtle plastron. You know how do you call the shell? But it's the bottom of the shell of the a turtle. She has a back which is round, and she has a square which is so the back which is round also represents the sky in China, because the sky was round. So this is why they choose the turtle. There are a lot of people have done. They used to do pyro. How do you say when you do divination using fire on something? Pyro. Yeah, okay, that's right. Okay, so they used, a lot of people do that on other kind of bones, like the omoplates. Oh, you say omoplates? Omoplates? How do you say? Shoulder. That's right. Thank you very much. My English is not so good. So. Yes, I'm referring to the auricle bones, but the auricle bones were the bottom part of the turtle, because the bottom part is more or less square, whether the top part is round. So this is we've got a lot of information from those times, because we found only, like, I think, 100 years old, 150 years old, they discovered all those plastrons of turtles. Before, they didn't know what they were, and they were using them for remedies, making them into powder. So we know that at the time they had important sacrifices to the Western mother and the Eastern mother. And then later on, the Eastern mother became a man because they wanted to make it the same. And then another very interesting story is Shi Wangmu, the West Queen Mother. She was supposed to confer legitimacy to the ancient kings. Now here we go. We've got Fuxi and Nuwa. Oh, and then also forget that one. Now here is, I don't know if you can see it. This is a rubbing from the Han Dynasty. So this is a rubbing which is about 2,000 years old. Okay, and here you see Shi Wangmu, and she is sitting on one side. It's a tiger. One side it's a tiger, and the other side it's a dragon. And the dragon was already the sign of the emperor. So that's interesting that in the year 2000, when the dragon has already became the sign of the emperor, this woman is sitting above the sign of the emperor. And then here you've got the fox with 9 tails. The fox with 9 tails, this is immortality, because she had also the elixir of immortality. And after that, she became Guanyin,
which is the Tibetan, what's an Avas? If I don't read it, okay, I'll go and tell you that after because I can't pronounce this word if I don't read it. Here, there's another very interesting, there's a bird with 3 legs. Now, this same bird with 3 legs used to carry the sun. He's here represented, and this is 5,000 years old. This is a part of a pottery. The bird carries the sun as the bird with 3 legs. And here, this is a watch with diamonds done today, I mean, maybe 5 years ago, in Korea, representing the same bird with the 3 legs. And very interesting, the nowadays emperor of Japan are supposed to be descendant of Amaterasu, which was the goddess of the sun, and which is also represented by that, but she's a goddess. So it's very interesting. All this has been transformed. But if you try to go back, but still now there's still like this symbol without, they kind of delinked it from the history of being the goddess of the sun. You know, they kind of separated the story. Okay, so now I can, and on the top of her head also, there's a shang. And the shang is that it's the loom break. It's a thing that has like a star. It's an 8 star. It's something that like a star with 8 points. And this is like, it means like in the Chinese mind, and a Chinese man has written a book about it, is an expert in textile, is that obviously women invented weaving. And at the time it was very important. Like the first thing people had to, you know, the first civilized people, they had to have clothes. So weaving clothes was very important. And this is why she is it's the most important goddess at the time. And she has this part of the loom on her head. Okay, now which is this button? This is why if I said that, I'm going to forget too many things. Okay, now this is a pottery which is from Bompo. This is 5,000. 5,000 years old. No, 5,000 BC. Yeah, 5,000 BC. So this is the Magu. Magu is another very important goddess. Ma means hemp. And hemp is the thing that it's marijuana also basically, but they were the first thing that they used to weave to make clothes, and that this pottery has already hemp. I mean like hemp drawing on it. It was very important because that was what they're using to make clothes, and so in China she's important but not so important. She's important as the folklore deess. But folkloric deess, but in Korea, she's like some people. It's even one of the creation myth of Korea, and in Japan, she's also very important. Now, I want to say that all these women are totally different from Maria. They have nothing to do with Maria because Maria is the mother of the Christ. Well, these women don't have children, so it's not the mother which is a deess. It's more like a shaman. And as a matter of fact, and like there's a big debate about the people studying those plastron of turtles, but it says on one plastron, and I'm hoping they're going to find another one, that originally the shamans were female. I mean, it's not, they don't say that, but that's basically what you can deduct of looking at this plastron. The shaman in China were females, a very, very proto-China. It may be, maybe 5,000-6,000 years ago. And there's a temple. I was answering a man earlier. There's a temple with a woman with blue eyes. As a matter of fact, she has a statue of a woman with blue eyes. It's interesting because the Buddha, I don't know if you know, but the Buddha is often represented with blue eyes also. So it's kind of surprising to see that in places where the people obviously had black eyes. And so anyway, a lot of creation myth in not only the Chinese, one of the Chinese creation myth, but in a lot of Chinese minority, they are matricentric. I'm not going to get into that. And now what's interesting is that I've only found one tale which is criticizing, and not even, this tale has 2 versions. One version criticizes women and the other one that doesn't. But there are no tales criticizing women in China. So I think this is kind of interesting because most of our tales are all criticizing China in our world. Now, yeah, that's the name. This is this name. Like I can't read that name. You can read it. Now, it's in Tibet, this is the god of compassion is male, but in China it's female. It's Guanyin, and as a matter of fact, there's people that think that the earliest Shi Wang Mu, the god, the mother of the. They say mother because Mu means mother, but Mu does not. It's not only mother. So we translate into the mother of the mother of the West, but it's not really that. And lots of people think that she was transformed into Guanyin later on. Anyway, even in the Indo-European world, there's lots of pockets, as the Basques, as an example, who have matricentric narratives, and not like the one we have. But the Basques are not Indo-European anyway, so.
Frederique, can I just clarify what you said there? You said that in China, there are no myths criticizing
Women, yes.
Whereas in the West, nearly everything that goes wrong is
Exactly. Only, as I say, only one is the one of Changde, that there are two versions. One which she's the culprit, and the other one, she's not the culprit. She just drank the elixir of life, not to let this other guy rob it. Okay. Okay, now in the field, because like all this is very good, all this is theory, but basically I came to the theory because I was first in the field and I was trying to understand what was happening in the field. So in the field we see something totally different because my experience, well, obviously, you know, I'm not like, I never married and I've had lots of boyfriends, a number of 71 now. So obviously for me, the nuclear family, and I never wanted to have children. I'd like to protect the environment. I thought there were already too many children anyway. And then I didn't really feel like adopting one either. I just liked my freedom too much. So this is why I start, you know, I never felt that the nuclear family was something so important because although my parents were very happy and never divorced, but still. Anyway, so I started seeing, and when in the world I was living, I mean, in that world I was living, and also a lot of my friends may be a bit similar to me, I never thought that nuclear family was something that was so obvious. And if you look at the American black people, as a matter of fact, they don't have nuclear family. It's not that they don't want to, but you know, a lot of black men are not getting, a lot of black women are having children, and the black men are in jail, as a matter of fact, because a friend of mine who was at the head of the Black Panther for a while, Ellen Brown, when Huey Newton, her boyfriend, was in jail, he was at the head of the Black Panther. She's written a book, and she's written it she researched very thoroughly, and she said that was 10 years ago. Okay, I'm not sure nowadays, but between the age of 18 and 45, 4 out of black men have been in jail in America. So obviously, you know, that explains what in America, and lots of black people, I mean, we've got black people in France too and everywhere, but I think, and I'm mainly referring to the situation in America, a lot of families are matriarchal, matrilineal or matriarchal because there are no men, you know. They get to be put in jail, and when they get out of jail, it's not very easy, so basically there are no males, so the females just have to do things on their own. So, but now, since what my conclusion was is like reproduction, you know, if you don't have reproduction, then obviously you don't have a society. I mean, the species is going to be finished. So the people, when they don't have any other solution, they just try to find a solution. What are they going to do to reproduce and to have children? They don't really go by the rule. We have to look for a wife in another village, and we have to change this, and we've got to do that. They just see their life, everyday's life. So how do they have children? Because obviously people want to have children because the children are going to take care of them when the parents get older. So they all think of that. So, and they don't really want to play by the rule. They just try to reproduce and to protect their offspring. And so basically, a lot of what I'm going to explain after is because the people in so many different settings and so many different countries and so many different places. I haven't been to all those countries. Also, I've been a lot of countries, but not as an anthropologist, mainly just having fun. But I've read a lot of books since I've started that, and especially in Africa, there is a lot of different arrangements to have children and to raise children successfully. So 2 ways. One of the ways to continue the house or the household, who cares where the guys are, you know, and the other way is to benefit the offspring. Now, obviously, homosexuality, and especially not homosexuality as far as a relationship, but homosexual sex, which happen in many species, and especially the giraffe, you know, it's hard to explain what is the evolutionary sense of that? Well, I don't think anybody's ever found it, but you know, it's interesting though. Okay, okay. Now I'm going to study bit by bit, you know, the way to refute the nuclear family theory. So the first one is, because it's a bit different, is polyandry now. Polyandry obviously is very common in Tibet, and like we think polyandry is unstable because the man always wants to work for his own biological children. Now in polyandry, you have 3 or 4 men married with a woman. Obviously, they don't always know who the father is, but it's evidently very ancient. It's written in the, as a matter of fact, what's the name of the book of the Jewish people? Okay, it's written in the Torah. It's written that polyandry is forbidden. So obviously it means that it existed before, okay? It's in the Kama Sutra. It's mentioned in the Kama Sutra. The Kama Sutra was written in the year 1000, more or less. And it's written, the guys say, oh, we've got a place in the south of India. They all marry, like all the women married 4 or 5 husbands, But supposedly they can only have 5. Husband of lovers, it doesn't matter, as a matter of fact. They can only have 5. That I can't figure why, but that's what they say in the Kama Sutra. I didn't read it in Sanskrit. I read the translation, okay? Now, obviously, it's very well known in Tibet, in the Himalaya and the Marches. It's very well known. But and as a matter of fact, in those regions, there are a lot of people who have studied that, like Levine. They have mainly studied the fairly rich people. They haven't studied really the whole poly. They have also, there's this theory that because in Tibet especially, because land was scarce and the people were attached to their land, obviously if one woman has 5 husbands, she's not going to have any more children than if she only has 1, basically. She's not that. So they won't divide the land. But what's very strange, I don't understand, because I've been in a couple of families nowadays, and these guys are in their 30s. And there are 2 or 3 guys married with 1 woman. And obviously, it's not because now they are Chinese. They are living in, they're living under the Chinese rule. They're not attached to their land. They're not attached to their lands. It doesn't make any sense. And when I ask them why, they say, well, because we think it's better. We've got 2 guys to work. It's better for the family. It's better for the children. But it's like the problem is that very often, the studies that have been made about polyandry were made about the fairly wealthy people, not about the hoi polloi, because there was nothing written about the hoi polloi. Nothing was said. So where are you going to research? There was no text. All the texts were about the rich people, about the aristocracy, and all the people who went to India when they left Tibet. It's a very different thing. So this is how I found out the classical polyandry riddle. I got the answer, because the problem was, how could you explain in Tibet 20% of the men were monks, okay? And 4 guys were marrying 1 woman. So what was happening with the rest of the women? So one solution, like Levin said, that a lot of women were dying when they were having their first child. Okay, that's possible, but still, the numbers don't add up. Well, it's very simple. And who told me that? It's a guy who is a Rinpoche. Rinpoche means a reincarnated Buddha, a Muyak Rinpoche. And he said, when I was a kid, the guy's in his late 60s. He's a few years, right? Yeah, he's 69, I think. And then he said, when I was a kid, we didn't care. The family, the mother was, like, they were not very rich people. Although he has been reincarnated, but he's a reincarnated Buddha, but the people around him were not very rich. And they said, we didn't care. There was the family was the house, and the woman was making love with whoever, and she was having children. We just wanted children, because if we didn't have children, we couldn't work the land, and we couldn't, and we couldn't send 1 boy we need to have lots of boys to send to the monastery. So we're having a lot of children. So that was the thing. The women who didn't get married, they just, we didn't have special land or whatever. They just had the house, and they were having children, and they didn't really care who the father was, as long as they were having children. Just the way that nowadays the Moso people are living, pretty much. And the people in Java are always living that way, and are also living that way. Anyway, so the purpose was always to continue the household or the lineage, or they had a bit of property, they had at least a house, and they want to have children to take care of them when they were older. Now, as I was saying, now it's good. Polyandry is doing a comeback in the tribal corridor, as well as in India. Now, this guy, now their name is a bit Stark, Weather, and Hames, published an article not very long ago. They found out 57 other societies around the world with polyandry. And they study why that would happen. They didn't get to any definite conclusion. So that's... Okay, and now patternable paternity, it's a bit the same thing. It's very frequent in South America, and it's the woman's choice, and it happens also in quite a few animals. Because, they very well know that you only need to have sex once, the right time to have a baby. You don't need to have sex with your husband and with a few other guys. But they think that more sperm helps the child. And they mainly think if the husband dies or something happened, then the other guys are going to take care of the child. And this is the same with quite a few animals. The Lucy also in New Guinea, they say that. But it's the same kind with animals. And the animals, as a matter of fact, it's multiple mating. And also they have but I'm not going to get into that, we won't have time. But anyway, the idea is to make sure, first of all, that the sperm is compatible with the female, so to make sure they have a child. Or eventually, if something happened to the husband or the father of the child, then there are the men to take care of the baby. Now, wife sharing is something which is interesting because the Inuit, this is interesting to say, because the Inuit, a lot of people say, this is terrible. As a matter of fact, the Inuit and all the people living in very hostile environment, like the Eskimo, this kind of thing. They live in small villages. So when they travel long distance, it's very dangerous. They might freeze to death or whatever. It's important for them to have other contact in other villages. So to do that, they exchange wives. It looks terrible for the wife. I don't know whether, but in a way, the wife usually agrees because she knows that by doing this, their children will be protected in the next village. And so that's also a way to protect the offspring in a hostile environment. And now in Africa, I think it's not the same because it's really decided by the men and by the man, and the woman is kind of felt forced to do that. Well, partly with
depends where in Africa. Africa
is
quite a big place.
Yeah, it is a big place. It is a very big place. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm just like, if I want to say everything, I'm going to run short of time. Now, I want just to go back to homosexuality because it's so strange, like it's in animal species, it's like 1,500 species. So obviously it's totally natural. And not that I am homosexual, but you've got to admit it's totally natural. And now it's interesting because the black swan, 20% of the pair of black swans are actually males. They rub an egg from a female and they raise the baby. Before that, we didn't know because you look at two swans, they look the same, the male and the female, they look the same. But now we know that like a lot of males, they get together to raise a baby. And now two females do that too. Obviously, two females, they don't have to rub an egg. But this is, how could you explain that? We don't know. Now with wild geese, it's even stranger. There's two males and one female. 3 of them raise a baby. Or 2 babies. So it's very, very interesting. We don't have time to study that, but it shows that in every setting, animals or human, whatever, they always find a way to have what they care is the result, to raise their offspring and to be successful raising their offspring. And the rules, who cares? That's not their problem. It's just the problem of the anthropologists who want to study that and make rules. The animals, what they care. Anyway, and then there's this case of female husband. You've got this, what is the name of this woman? Right. They wrote a wonderful book about that, to perpetuate the lineage when a woman eventually marry another woman when she can't have children. And then they don't have sex. It's just to perpetuate the lineage. Okay, next one. Okay, now the matrilineal family with marriage. Yeah, well, this is the when you have a marriage, when people get married in a matrilineal family, it's a problem because the guy doesn't know whether he needs to help his mother and his mother's family or he needs to help his own children. So that's a problem. Don't read because he's going to criticize me because you're reading. But I'm just joking. But in matrilineal family, the woman's position is rather high, as an example in the Moso or in Zaba. But it's not that high really because the uncles and the brothers are kind of ruling the show. The women are do everything they want in the house, but outside it's mostly their brother and their uncles. So it's not to say that the women have a very high position. Nevertheless, the Moso have a totally matricentric creation myth, and it's possible that has changed a lot because they've been in China, I quote, for hundreds of years. So I'm sure they've transformed the situation has changed. But now, oh no, wait, I'm jumping because I'm jumping. In the matrilineal families with marriage, I'm talking of the one without marriage. What I want to say is that obviously we've got some very, very famous Muslim society now. Tell me the word I can't pronounce. Right, that's right. I always mispronounce it. So.
No, maybe you know.
No, I always mispronounce it because I met Peggy Reeves who studied them, and I pronounce it and they say, it's not that. So now I feel terrible. I don't know. I don't really want to say it. I let somebody else do a mistake. It's better. So anyway, so now it's known that a lot of ancient royalty, the line was going through women. And because obviously, you're sure when a woman has a baby, you're sure it's the woman's baby, right? But you don't know whether it's the guy's baby. So, so that was much better to make sure that the blood was pure to go through the female line. Ancient in the past. Now, the matrilineality without marriage, and this is very interesting because this solves the problem of the dual loyalties. If there is a marriage, then the guy doesn't know who to choose, his mother's family and his sister's children, or his own children. If there is no marriage, this is much simpler. He just works in the day in his mother's family. He helps raise his sister's children, and at night he just go and make love with his lover. And if you like, obviously, sometimes I've met a man in Zaba. He said when he was 18, he's my age now, and he said, and I'm 68. And so the guy said when he was young, he met this woman, and they were both 18, 19, and he really loved her. They used to climb the wall they used to climb a tower in Zaba. They used to climb the tower until the second floor or the third floor to make love with the girl. And that was known in the village. It was not, it was a way for the woman to test the guy, as a matter of whether he was able to climb fast enough. And so now, obviously, the houses are new, so you can't climb because the houses are new, so the stones are like this, and they are cut. The stones are cut. In the past, the stones were like natural stones, so there were gaps in between the stone, and the earth was a little not very good after a few rainy seasons, so the people can climb. Now they can't climb, and now the girls have a cellular phone, so if she likes the guy, she just goes downstairs and opens the door. So, and if she doesn't like him, if she doesn't like the face, she doesn't open the door. So that's simple. But they said, so this man said when he was 18, he met this girl, and then he loved her, and then they were both living in their mother's house. He was living in his mother's house, she was living in her mother's house, but they never made love with anybody else. And when their parents died, when the two mothers died, not their parents because they didn't have fathers, then when the mother of the boy died and the mother of the girl died, they just got together and married when they already had 4 or 5 children. And 4 or 5 children, none of them, as a matter of fact, live in the same way. They all went to town and get married with the usual way, what everybody else does. So now, but what's interesting is that the Greek and the Chinese have both written that in the past, children knew their mother but not their fathers. And this is what also, like Bachofen, whom I talked about at the beginning, he also had read that, and that also impressed him, as it's obviously in the past. In the past, that was the way it was. Now, well, that's interesting. I wanted, that's one thing. It's very interesting. In some case, you can prove with DNA whether a society, whether a group of people were all related through women, because there is less diversity in the woman genetic. Right, there's less diversity than in the male. But then the problem is that you have all other ways to interpret it. So, but I think with a bit now the DNA, you see, the problem is a lot of people who are studying DNA, they're not trying to prove that. So, and they don't really know about the matrilineal situation, so they come up with other explanation. As an example, only men went to like in Tahiti or whatever. Only men came from wherever. First they thought they were coming from Taiwan, but now they think they came from Sundra, which was a part of Indonesia that sunk in 8,000 years ago. So because the Austronesian people were supposed to, there were lots of them in Indonesia, in Taiwan. So they thought they all were coming from Taiwan, which doesn't make sense because Taiwan was so small anyway. But so now they think they came from Sundra, which sunk 8,000 years ago, and these people went all the different islands. And now in Tahiti, they found they said that because the DNA of the female line was more limited, it's just because all the guys went there without women. So you've got different interpretation, but I think if somebody would study DNA and would really be interesting to prove that, they probably could prove it. Now, one article was written that the Austronesian Proto-Oceanic Society was, as a matter of fact, matrilineal. It's proven by DNA, but some people don't agree with that. They said there are other explanations. Now, in New Mexico, they just discovered a tomb, maybe a couple of years ago, a tomb of New Mexico elite. Well, not in New Mexico. I can't remember which group of people they were. And the elite from those years were all matrilineally related, so they think it was a matrilineal a group of aristocratic matrilineal group. Okay. Anyway, well, we probably spoke about anything. Yeah, but there's also the patrilineality with a marriage. Well, it's also in Africa. It's not so important. But the point is, let me see how much did I still have time? Because I told you
15 minutes.
15 minutes.
1-5.
Oh, that's woo! No, there's not plenty of time. I've got lots of things to say. Now the group sex. Okay, group sex. Okay, there's a tribe in Amazon in the Amazonia, the Zoe, that probably practice group sex because only one guy, only a Spanish guy went there, was not an anthropologist, and he said everybody has 5 wives and 5 husbands. Number 5 again, I don't know why. I just think that he just couldn't say that the people didn't get married, and they also didn't want to say they didn't get married. So just, but they have all different young, older husband, wives, And now one guy, this guy Tien Pendit, I forgot exactly who he was. He said that the Sentinelisi did practice group sex. Now, Chris told me today or yesterday that there are 2 books that were written about that, right? Group sex in the Amazonie. Okay, so I don't know the name.
John Crocker in the Canal.
Tim Craig in Mehinaku.
Okay.
Tonga.
Okay, now alloparenting, you might have heard, you might or might not have heard of that. You know, this wonderful woman, Sarah Hardy? Sarah Hardy, which was the first one, I guess, to use this word, right? But it's
No, she never talked about group sex.
No, alloparenting.
Alloparenting.
Yes.
Sorry, yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay.
I apologize.
You've got to read some, This is why I want that, because otherwise it's very confusing.
Okay,
And confusing for everybody, and confusing for me
I'm a
too.
bit slow. Yeah.
Okay. So it's a new term.
Just wants to talk about group sex.
You're still with the group sex, right? You haven't moved away from the group sex.
But I'm just lingering on it.
It's always like that, every lecture. Isn't it?
So anyway, alloparenting is a new term, but it mostly happens. And a lot of animals, as a matter of fact, do it, like lions and the loosely asocial animals, because it's cooperative brood care. It allows the mother to go and basically, in the case of the lions, like you have 5 female lions, it allows one female lion take care of the brood, of the babies, of all the female lions, as long as they're more or less the same time. And then the other female lions go hunting, because in the lions, only the female go hunting. The male just come to do the kill at the last second. No?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, because you say no. Okay, so this is one example of brood care. But it's very rare in primates. Only humans can do that. And it's usually,
There is some in monkeys.
Yes,
but
some
not
monkeys.
in apes.
Right, okay, some,
Really only apes.
right, okay, so it's in this, yeah, it's
And the basic reason is that monkeys live with their female relatives. Apes don't. Simple reason.
Very good, very good. Yeah, that's right, because the female or the dispersing sex in the apes. A good point. Yeah, I never thought about that. But anyway, so it means alloparenting means like when the mother, and this is why have grandmothers. This is also why women could have menopause as well as other animals have menopause, like the elephants and the orca and the sperm whales, and maybe the orca, as a matter of fact, is the way, like, if females keep having babies, they can't take care of their daughter offspring. But if the females, like our grandmother, then they can take care of their daughter offspring. And the sister, the younger sister, can also help. This is possibly what has allowed the human beings to have such a big brain and to give enough care to the babies that were, the human babies obviously are very helpless. So it's hard. It would have been hard for a mother to raise the babies and to do everything herself. It was no alloparenting. Okay, now we get to matriarchy because that's what the topic of the talk, Morris. And then it's been a taboo topic, and it does exist in some animals. In the main example is the spotted hyenas, which, as a matter of fact, the spotted hyena, the female, are so aggressive they even have a pseudo penis, which resulted in the fact that early on people thought they were only males. Only a penis. It's very interesting. Now the orcas, and the orcas is a very interesting thing, because the orcas, there are three types of orcas, well, mainly two, but let's say the resident and the transient. And like one group of orca is matrilineal and the other one is not. And in the group of orca, which is matrilineal, and now we do that because we put some chips to track their movements. And then we know that the males stay with their mother, stay in the pod all their life, but they go and have sex elsewhere. So this proves that in some species, in many animal species, as a matter of fact, they have the taboo, how do you call it? I better read because the incest taboo. Lévi-Strauss first thought, what makes us human is because we have an incest taboo. Now we're discovering that a lot of animals who live in society have incest taboo. So in the bonobos, we don't really know because the bonobos have sex all the time, but they probably have some kind of incest taboo too, because otherwise they would be like this, so which they're not. So anyway, now it doesn't mean like elephants are also matriarchal because the males are separated from the female. Now it's still coercion does happen, and especially with elephants, because the male elephant is extremely powerful, and if he wants to fuck a female, she doesn't have any way to not agree to. But now the mole rats are a good example of animals that are pretty matriarchal, but we can't get into that. Now we get into the Chinese ancient kingdoms. Now the one real matriarchy, as I said, when I was researching the towers, and I found out that all the ancient Chinese books talking about the towers, they were talking about there's Er Guos. Nu means woman, but both means women, as a matter of fact, and Guo means country. So it was like woman country. And so there were maybe two, that's why I put an S, we're not really sure, but I'll come to that point later. So it was documented from 515 to 742 in the Chinese Annals. And what's important, and we're going to get to the next page. One thing I want to say, I forgot that. What's important also in matriarchal society, whether they, in animal matriarchal society, lots of people thought, well, there's only matriarchy when there is sexual dimorphism. How do you say? Pronounce it? Dimorphism. Okay. Right. Meaning that the female is bigger than the male. As a matter of fact, the female hyena is bigger than the male. But in elephant, the elephant is bigger than the female. In orca, the male is also bigger than the female. In bonobos, the male is also bigger than the female. But the female get together and create like clans to defend themselves from the males. So it's not always necessary. But what's important is that all the species have no predators. Okay, there are no competition for resource. So why the bonobos are so different from the chimpanzees? Because the chimpanzees, the male, are very aggressive. As a matter of fact, what's interesting, the bonobos are the only animal where females have breasts. We are the only species, we thought we were the only species with breasts, and that confused the male, because normally when a female has breasts, she's lactating, and when she's lactating, she's not going to be wanting to make love or to fuck, whatever. So Now the thing is so in the bonobos, and they have sex all the time, the male doesn't know whether the female is lactating or not because they have some breasts, not like ours, but they have some breasts, which is interesting. But anyway, the bonobos don't have predators. The bonobos live south of and they don't have they don't have competition for resource need. They live south of the Congo. Now the big apes can't swim. We're the only one who can swim. So north of the Congo, you have the gorillas and the chimpanzee, and there's lots of competition for resource. South of the Congo, you have the bonobos, and there's no competition for resource. Obviously, orcas, they have no competition for resource, and elephants don't have it either. So basically, what I think, we're going to get that at the end of the talk, but what I think is that matriarchal societies existed in the past in different settings, but they all disappeared when competition for resource happened. Because when you have competition for resource, you have to fight. And the men being a group of men with a man leader is probably going to be more powerful and fight better than a group of male with female leaders. So so when there is a competition for resource, I think it's very hard for matriarchal societies to continue. And now in the mole rats are very special because they live under the ground. It's very special case. But all the other ones, they don't have competition. So they have very few or no predators. Now there's one monkey that eats grass on the what? Huh? Okay, I think they might not have competition for resource by the place where they live. But that's the only other case where I think it's not 100%. It's
very male dominated.
But they're male dominated.
Oh no, then that's not them. Then there's another one. Okay, there's another one. Okay, I didn't put it. I don't want to talk about it because I'm getting confused. But the point is, and I start saying there is no meta theory. So we just can think that's happening. You could just have a think that's happening, but it's not 100%. Okay, now I go back to the next one. Okay, now I want to say that I define that. We had a big discussion with Chris. I define matriarchy. It's a society where the women are in power at all levels, not only in the house, okay? At all levels. It's the exact reverse mirror image of a patriarchal society. Okay, I'm very strict about that definition because for me, matriarchy is not this fantastic situation or everybody's friendly, we don't have wars. I think women leaders, when they're in power, they're about as ruthless as men leaders are. So I don't think, I think it's what we need is a balanced society just for the sake of using everybody's brain. It's not fair that in our society, in some countries, we don't use female brains, like in India, in Pakistan, female brains are not being very well used. I think this is a shame. It doesn't mean that I don't want to use the male brains. That'd be as stupid. But it's not like matriarchy for me is not this. It's not. What is this German? I had a big discussion with her. She created the matriarchy association. Hagen.
No, she didn't.
Aha, that's it. Yeah, we had a big discussion with her because she invented a new sense to matriarchy. Okay, I said, well, let's just take the simple sense. Patriarchy is one thing, the reverse is matriarchy. You replace patri by matri, and you've got the same thing in reverse. It's simple. And if you've got another kind of society, just invent another word. And then we had a bit of the same discussion with Chris. I said, well, just come up with another word, not with that one. Anyway, matriarchy is a very taboo topic in Western circles, but not in China. Because for them that's the way it was. It's very logic because they have all these legends, it's no problem with them. This you have already told you more. It says, I bought a house. Oh yeah, I got to get to the last point. This is important because I bought a house in the region. The point why I really start studying this matriarchal society and see whether they were exist. And I'm going to tell you the joke. Chris insists that I tell you the joke. This is not the joke, the story. So I had this local boyfriend. And so one day I was in my house in China, in Chengdu, and he was with me, and I have a low table. And let's say, okay, this is you can see me inside, this is the low table, right? And there's like the top part and the bottom part, there's some magazines. So I'm looking for some magazine, and the guy is sitting here, okay? So I'm looking for some magazine, and I show him the magazine, I put my head on his knees, and he goes, ah! I said, wait a minute, why have I squeezed? I didn't know he had anything in his knees or something. So I said, what did I do? He said, get up, get up. I said, get up. Well, what's happening? You can't kneel in front of me. So, this is the first guy ever who said I can't kneel in front of him. So I said, usually they're very happy. I mean, did it in front of me. I mean, usually they love it. So I said, this guy, and I said, he was the number 69, as a matter of fact. I thought I was going to stay with this number for a while. I thought it was a good number, but I met another guy I really liked, so I said, well, what the heck is going to be the number 70? So, and then another one I like even better, so now I'm going to the number 71. I've been with him for nearly 3 years. But anyway, so when I saw the reaction of that guy, I said, you know what? This guy doesn't come from the same world that we come, because I had many boyfriends from all different walks of life, all different countries, all different religions, and then I never found that. So I said, this guy is special. So because he was my boyfriend, I had a house in the region, so I was able to study all their courtship rituals. Not now anymore. The guys my age now, all the young people, they don't do that anymore, obviously, and I'm sure they have no problem with a woman kneeling in front of them. But the old, so I thought it was a very interesting. Also, what helped me researching this region, I have a little foundation. And whenever I'd go to a village, I would sometimes help them if they had some school that the road was broken. I fixed a bridge, or I fixed the road. We built 8 kilometers of road in the mountain, or we fixed the water system. Now we don't need to do that anymore because China is rich now, and it was mainly in Sichuan, and after the earthquake, the government had a lot of money to spend in this region. But anyway, the people really welcome me. They didn't see me because a lot of anthropologists, don't take it wrong, but a lot of anthropologists, they go in the place and they study the people, and then they write their PhD, they write their book, and what's in for the local people? Nothing. So, sometimes they don't even want to say things because they have the feeling that the anthropologists are just using them. But that wasn't my case, because I was living with the people. And I was in a special position also to research this society when there is no marriage, because they didn't want to talk, because the Chinese were making them feeling guilty because they had no marriage, like animals. I said, don't worry, I'm the same way than you have. I'm like number 70, so hey, you can talk with me. I'm just the same way than you. I'm not for marriage. So after a little while, they all getting very, excited and telling me all these jokes and stories and things that I don't have time to repeat.
Sorry.
Anyway.
What was the taboo of being on your knees?
Oh no, it's just that I can't kneel in front of him.
Why?
Because it's in his thinking, a woman can't kneel because it's putting me in a lower position.
What was the ethnicity?
He's from Charong. He's from Zhonglu.
Where's that?
It's one of the region where the towers are in China. It's in Sichuan.
Did he explain this in terms of a man mustn't have a woman kneeling put towards him because it would reverse the matriarchal political?
No. He just said that they don't want. It's just like it makes him feel very uncomfortable if a woman is kneeling in front of him. The rest didn't make him uncomfortable at all. Anyway, let's go to the next. This one, okay. So yeah, but then we won't have enough time. So then that's really what. First I'd heard all these legends, and I read in the books that the people had, the Er Guos had towers and all that, but I was not totally convinced. And I thought, well, what's the heck? I really didn't care. And I never really care about the women's situation because my situation was very special. I never realized that all the women were not in the same situation than I was. So, but then when I saw that, I said, you know what? It may be true. They might have had some kind of matriarchal society, and those are the remains of this kind of society. And then I thought, well, I really owe it to my sisters in a way to research it, because if I don't research it, like the guys my age, they're like, and the like Tibetan and even Chinese, they die earlier than the Western people. So in 10 years, 15 years, these people won't be there anymore. So if I don't research that, and if I don't make it known, then it will just disappear, like the towers. If I hadn't been there, the towers wouldn't be there anymore. So I just felt that I owe it to my sisters to do that, because I have the time and the capacity to do that. Anyway, so I also, as I say, the Chinese Annals are ancient books and serious books, and so they said very clearly that the Er Guos, maybe there were two of them, one from the east, one from the west. And what happened really, maybe I said that later, I don't remember, but anyway, he doesn't want me to read. So what happened probably is that maybe there was a confederacy of tribes that are like a very large place. And then as people like the Tibetans were, because the Tibetans, it's very high and it's a very tough terrain. So the Tibetans were already living at high altitude. Were the only people who didn't mind invading them. The Chinese would never thought of that. Who cares to go in this place? And although Tamba is a wonderful place. It's like a microclimate, but the Chinese didn't know that exists anyway in those times. But so possibly it was a large country, because in some texts it says it's very long, and then this country was divided in two countries later, or they were maybe not countries, they were just a group of tribes. And so what we read in the books, that they sometimes speak of the West Er Guos and the East Er Guos. So this is why I say Er Guos with an S. But anyway, the Chinese Annals were a book written by the scribes for the emperor to know the people around him. So there were no stories. It's not like they were trying to really say the truth. And these kingdoms with the queens pledged allowance to the emperor of China nearly 15 times during 150 years. And it's written down when they came, the name of the queen, it's what they brought, what they took in to go back to their country. So it's very well, it's written, it's no. And now obviously in the 20th century and late 19th century and early 20th century, a lot of Westerners traveled, some Westerners traveled to these areas. They met some women who are just the queen of little king, well, the queen, more or less the chief of little kingdoms. And they also heard of the local people telling of the legends, and they also studied the Chinese books. So, it seemed pretty real, really. I already saw that. Right, the Chinese scholar never bothered to establish whether these were matriarchal kingdoms or not, because for the Chinese, matriarchal society did exist. So they didn't care about saying anything. Now there's a woman, Jay, I forgot her name, something Jay. She lives in Canada, and she wrote an article about that, and she fell short of saying these were real matriarchy, but she also doesn't really know very well, because she just thought these people were Tibetans. As a matter of fact, they were not Tibetans. They were invaded by Tibet, and they were invaded in Tibet after 742, because in 793 they said, well, now this kingdom, this woman's kingdom this queendom as a king. And this is when the Tibetan had invaded. And after, we never hear about them again. So now, Christine Mathieu, who was a French woman married who lives in Australia now, she wrote a fantastic book about the Matrilineal Moso, that she studied them like 20 years ago. So it's not like studying them now, because now they've been influenced by the Chinese, by the tourism, by anything. But in the time they were, as a matter of fact, when she started going, she couldn't even go there, because it was close to tourism. And so she states, and she's a real anthropologist, not like me, and she states that the question of matriarchy needs to be reopened. Now, Bielenstein, which is a very well-known historian about the Tang Dynasty Annals, from the Han to the Tang Dynasty Annals, he lists all the tributes that were paid to the Chinese court by the Er Guos. So he listed them because I didn't read the annals, I can't read Chinese, especially in the old Chinese, although it's fairly similar to recent Chinese, but still. So he's a scholar, and he listed all the paying missions that existed. And then Denwood is a Tibetologist, and Zeisler, okay? She's a linguist, excellent and amazing linguist. They studied the boundaries of the Er Guos, and she speaks Chinese, Arabic, Sanskrit. I'm not sure if she speaks everything of that world. He speaks Tibetan anyway, and I think something else, and she speaks the rest. Anyway, they study all those different texts, and all these texts speak of those Er Guos, but it's strange, because there might have been one that was near India, or it's the same, because the frontier of India and China, they're close together.
Can I just ask, you've been speaking for 65 minutes.
Yeah.
How much more time do you need?
Well, I think we can go. I am pretty much there. Okay, but you say I can keep speaking. So you mean, now wait a minute. Anyway, so I think other people have studied that, and I think it's pretty. They did a pretty thorough study, more than I can do, and they seem to believe that this kingdom also existed. Now that's right. We've got the remains. I already more or less told you. Zaba is a free love society. I already told you about that more or less. Now, what's interesting is that in the Java society, and then we have this discussion with Chris, is because the towers, the woman used to live in the tower on the 3rd floor. As I said, the guy had to climb the tower to get in. So basically, it was away from the woman, and the parents know that. It's like it's their tradition, okay? And basically, it was a way for the woman to select the guy. But it's the total opposite of the donjon. We're our idea of the donjon, because in the donjon, the parents put the girl to put her out of reach of the man who can spoil her. And in the Zaba society, as well in the Mosu society, the woman can have as many lovers as she can, and the more the better. Same thing for the guy, obviously, it's the same. And they want to have a lot of kids in the house, so it's, we're not going to get into details. So they can have as many lovers as they want. And that's their way of thinking. So obviously it's a very different conceptual grade from ours. This is the other thing that Christine Mathieu says, proving that that she thinks that the Dongnugo really existed, and she's a very reliable anthropologist. But now she lives in Australia and she doesn't have time to deal with that. Now that we've got, the problem is we don't have archaeological remains, so that's the main problem. Now, and that's why if we had them, then nobody could say anything. Now, we can still explain that, because the towers, what's interesting, the towers that are in the region, I dated, there are more or less 1,000 towers now standing, and I dated about 100. So 10%, statistically, it's an enormous number. The oldest I found in this region is about 1,000 years old. So none of them date from the Dongnuguo, from the Er Guos. Now I found, in the Chinese Annals of the Han Dynasty 2,000 years ago, they already talk about these towers, okay? So we know that they were existing 2,000 years ago. And I've got another proof, but we're not going to get into the details. We don't have any time. And then, so the thing is that in that region, the towers have been destroyed and rebuilt. Now, I did find a tower which is 1,700 years old, but it's in a different region. It's part of this, but it's not a region where there's no story about having matriarchal society. It's a different situation. We're not going to get into that. Now, no burial remains have been found, but these people are said to be ancient Tiang, and the Tiang are people that used to burn their dead. The Chinese always say these people don't care to suffer. They just don't want to be killed, because if they're being killed and they want to be killed, but their people, they need to be able, their people need to be able to burn them. If they don't get burned, it's like a disaster for them. They don't care about anything else. So, and possibly they were practicing double burial, like the Gebites, another minority out there. They have 2 burial, and the second, only the first one in earth burial, and the second they do like the Tibetan burials nowadays. They throw it in the river, not nowadays, but what they used to do, throw him in the river or whatever, or give it to, not to give it to the vultures, because this is like, it's not fresh meat, obviously. So now these regions are likely not very highly populated, so it's possible that we would find something else one of these days that will justify it, but maybe not. So that's the main problem. No, okay. Then it's like pretty much I've already told you more or less that. We don't need to go back. Oh, I got that. But anyway, I just want to insist that there's a total fluidity of social gender in every case. And one of the things which is interesting also in the Balkan, there's it's in Albania, they have the sworn virgins, because in some cases, women that don't accept the female roles in a patriarchal society, they've got way to get out. Same thing in Africa. We're not going to get into that. We don't have time. There's a lot of concepts also that don't resist the close examination, especially a lot. It's something that always shocked me. If women are not supposed to do war or to hunt, why do we have Greek goddess of war and hunting and other, it's a bit strange, but anyway. And that men invented the tools, ha ha ha. Now with the chimpanzee and bonobos, they're proving that the female mostly are using more tools than the male, because the female are weaker. The male, they just use strength. The female, they got to find other ways. And the incest taboo, we already talked about that. One thing which is interesting, what? Okay, yeah. One thing which is interesting is now we can prove egalitarian, ancient egalitarian society that by testing bones and seeing what the people were eating, meaning if the male and female were eating the same food, and we can see that in ancient bones, it means that they probably had the same level. If the male were better fed than the female, it's probably that the female were at a lower level. That we can do that now. Okay, we're not going to get into that. It's important that pairing and association, even when part of a reproductive strategy, are not always about sex. And even in animals, sex is not solely for reproduction purposes. This is because we always think, oh, well, we always mix up everything. And we have to say it's not the case. Anyway, I think I'm pretty much there. Yeah, well, we just, in the past, I think we're just going to go to the last page. I'm going to get back to my conclusion because I think I like my conclusion. And I need to finish. Here we go. Yeah, on my conclusion. Okay, this is Tamba, so you could see it's very pretty, right? And anyway, I think that, as I said, patriarchal society are much better at conquest. And I think, Indo-European tribes I've used, that's what I believe, it's my belief, I've used patriarchy and monotheistic religion, although obviously in India they have Hinduism, which is not a monotheistic religion, to conquer the world, because now 56% of the languages are Indo-European languages. Many of the men in India, where they have still matrilineal societies, many of the men say, hey, look, the rest of the guys are patriarchal, so why don't we get the same way than they are? And they try to change it. So now these unconventional cases are soon to disappear. So we're going to make sure they're all documented before that. But in the same time, in our society, a lot of men are realizing that this patriarchy also enslaves all men, because it's very good for all the alpha male. The alpha male are very happy, Trump and this cohort of guys. They're very happy with that. But a lot of men don't feel comfortable in that position. And they wish maybe this is what so many people came to your talk about matriarchy, is because a lot of men don't feel comfortable in being forced to be the macho male. They would rather not to be forced to be. And I think thought I was very lucky, because being a woman, I don't have to be macho. And I can do everything the men can do, I can do. But I don't have to be macho. Hey, I got the best of the two worlds. So anyway, I think it's very important that we study without bias the diversity of the human social arrangement, and eventually that we learn from our primitive ancestors. Thank you very much.